Hello, welcome to my creative critical reflection, where today I will be discussing my print project, the magazine OUTLAP. For background information, OUTLAP is a motorsport magazine. Motorsport is any sport involving the racing of motor vehicles, but most commonly refers to cars and motorcycles. While other sports such as basketball and American football only contain one major league, motorsports is a genre filled with multiple individual racing series. Although some series do contain crossover, each format has its own drivers, rule sets, and teams. The most popular of these formats that you might recognize are Formula One, a European-based single-seater series, NASCAR, an American stock car series, and MotoGP, a European-based motorcycle series. When I refer to OUTLAP as a motorsport magazine, I refer to it encompassing all the 7 most popular categories: Formula One, NASCAR, MotoGP, IndyCar, WEC, WRC, and IMSA. How does your product use or challenge conventions, and how does it represent social groups or issues? In the field of motorsport, there are some notable magazines which make up most of the industry: Motorsport Magazine, Grassroots Motorsports, Autosport, Racer, and Road and Track, to name a few. However, there also exist several smaller indie publications, most springing up recently due to the rise of popularity of the F1 series. Still, all of these magazines follow certain conventions, including my own. Color is one convention I followed in this project by using primaries. The primary color, plus white, and the occasional orange are the most common colors seen in cars and bikes. Each of these colors also for a fan may correlate with a specific team, i.e., readers may associate red with Ferrari and Ducati, blue with Williams and Porsche, yellow with Lotus and for accents, orange with McLaren and Gulf liveries, and white as a common base and accent color. By using primary colors on a white base, the magazine is given a classic racing look, all while creating a triadic color harmony. Although not all magazines opt for this approach, for example, Motorsport Magazine is green, it still remains the most common. For font, I choose blocky, bold text due to a long-time association with racing, car, and sport magazines dating back to the 1920s. The sleek look of sans serif font helps to evoke the feeling of speed and modernity that racing and racing technology feature, while their boldness helps them to clearly pop out from the rest of the cover, which is needed when the subject of one's magazine is as visually busy as a race car. Additionally, I also conform to the simple and easily readable design and format of sports magazines. Images that take up the whole page, color blocking, and newspaper-like article layout are more specific conventions I used. Also, I both challenge and use norms when formatting how my magazine is organized. While the sections of my magazine are fairly standard, the length of each section emphasis is what is odd. The very clear and short highlight section is not typical of the racing magazine. It is normally longer and less visually emphasized. My race review articles are also longer than average. This is to stand out from other magazines by offering a more detailed perspective of the race, as exclusive images only found in the magazine. I feel that, to my surprise, the thing that challenged conventions the most was the use of illustrations. Apart from some indie and Eastern-based magazines, drawings are not present unless they are being used in a chart or diagram. Considering how important artists are to the greater motorsport community, I find this odd. Teams and events are major commissioners for artists. As an example, Ferrari hires artists to create posters for every race of the F1 calendar and repeats this process every year. My question is, why not apply this to magazines as well? Illustrated covers and features look fantastic, and by doing so, your magazine supports one of the most creative parts of the fan base. I wanted to see what this could look like, so for my magazine, I drew the front cover and display photos for the table of contents. Another way my magazine challenges norms is that it appeals to the younger audience range. The vast majority of motorsport magazines appeal to older demographics, and for a decent reason. For a long time, motorsport was a community largely dominated by the 35+, so to be successful, magazines catered to them. This focus on older generations made many magazines unappealing to younger audiences who want something more modern and fun. Yet motorsports have been gradually shifting. to a younger demographic. According to the site Motorsport, aptly named, the average age of F1 fans has gone down from 36 in 2017 to only 32 in 2025. F1's chief commercial officer, Emily Prazer, claims that around 40% of F1's Instagram and 50% of F1's TikTok followers are under the age of 25. Although this shift is most pronounced in F1, due to their rebranding by Liberty Media, a trickle-down effect has occurred, causing almost every motorsport to gain a younger fan base. My goal for this magazine is to appeal to younger generations while still having enough classic sensibilities for the older generations to not be completely alienated. I do this by adhering to the standard of sports magazine, not being too avant-garde with the design and keeping it simple, while still adding fun and flair for pops of art and color. How does your project engage with audiences, and how would it be distributed as a real media text? This magazine engages with the audience for its unique images and informative impression. The illustrations on the cover and in the articles help it stand out from other projects of the same genre. I hope this will lead to audiences to be more interested in what we have to say inside the magazine, due to its appearance on the outside and in the first few pages. I also tried to add little details to make a true motorsports fan excited to look deeper into it. For example, on the front cover, each car type is shown from an equal increment in years: 1950, the inaugural year of F1, 1975, 2000, and 2025. The current year. Each car is also drawn after the Ferrari for said year, because Ferrari is the only team to be present in every season of F1. If this project were a real magazine, I would first start a campaign on social media apps such as Instagram, Blue Sky, and TikTok to build interest in the product. By making image posts and short-form content hitting at what would be insider issues, we can spread intrigue to a vast audience. By corroborating with artists and other publications, news of our magazine will further spread to their followers. Those who are invested in the project can follow us on our social media platforms and check us out on our website. On the website, a limited number of individual articles can be read until a subscription must be purchased. Our magazine issues will also be up for sale there, with the option to subscribe for a consistent supply of issues coming every month or buy the individual issue. An extra fee can be paid for delivery of a print version. The default method of access will be digital. As someone who subscribes to different racing magazines, this tends to be the typical payment and access format. However, your focus on using technology to access and advertise the product is useful for the younger demographic. I plan to lean to as well, as they tend to be the most tech-savvy. How do your production skills develop throughout this project? One of the ways I grew the most in this project was my ability to work around time restriction and delays. As someone who must take immunosuppressants to function, I get sick very frequently. In addition to health problems, I also had to deal with a family emergency erupting the dates I had planned for work, requiring me to push them backwards. As a compromise, I dedicated larger portions of the days I had available to finishing the project. Learning to become more flexible is a skill I will apply to future projects. Whenever dates are interrupted, I learn to actively reschedule so I can give myself enough time to finish. During this project, I learned to be neater with my proportions to create a more polished design. Normally, when I'm designing, I freehand it and hope it's proportionate, but for this project, I made sure to use thin rectangular markers to make sure the proportions of each match the one next to it. The markers helped to make my project more precise and professional than it would have been without proper measurements. I also learned to use a real photography camera in the form of my mother's Lumix. It took a while to understand, but once I did, I could take better pictures than I could ever do with a phone. With the camera, I used the viewfinder instead of the screen to save battery, in sports mode so I could get clearer pictures when the cars were passing by. I also learned the best spots on the track to take pictures. My favorite was the series of corners at turns 11, 10, and 12, where the cars slowed down enough for me to get a clear snap. However, I did learn that fast-moving objects are difficult to track under low-light conditions with the camera, so all the photos I took had to be taken during the daytime. On the topic of cameras, I learned how important it was to follow rules, such as the rule of thirds and the golden spiral in cropping. While taking the photos and creating, I focused on positioning the elements in different spots to create fulfilling composition. I used close framing and close-up to make the race seem more intense, and open framing and establishing images when I wanted to make the track seem vast. However, the photos I still had to be cropped further to fit the format of the article. A poorly cropped image can ruin the flow of a magazine, so I took time to test the different crops of an image until I found the one that best fit. How did you integrate technologies, software, hardware, and online in this project? As previously mentioned, one technology I used was my mom's Lumix camera. The Lumix camera is compromised in multiple settings, not all of which I fully understand, but all of which I tested. I learned how to use filters to get a more vibrant photo, and how to use sports mode to reduce blur. I also learned how to transfer photos onto my computer, recover deleted photos, and sort those photos into files. To create the illustrations, I used the app Paint. I've been using this app since 6th grade, so I'm very familiar with its mechanics. It has features such as lasso, which helps me resize and stretch images, brushes them to make different paints. The different brushes really help me to create different illustration styles. I know that one person could not illustrate the entirety of a 108-page magazine, and multiple different artists work on one issue. So, I decided to try out different styles to pretend that different artists worked on it. I utilized the thin outline brush for the Sapien Smith's illustration to create a Patrick Nagales drawing with my own flair, because I thought he made beautiful portraits. I used a realistic oil paintbrush for the Ferrari horse drawing because I wanted to get a painted piece. I wanted a simple black colored tire for 75, and for Mark Marquez, I wanted to draw a 2D drawing that would be more commonly seen in Japanese artists such as Ranka Fujiwara, because I felt it matches his personality. To create the magazine, I used the site Canva. There are many things I enjoyed regarding Canva, such as the ability to easily check your proportions, the easiness of the system, and the background remover. Canva still has some major issues. One minor but personal one is the templates. Personally, I don't like templates. I feel like it's cheating if I use them, so I don't. Additionally, the system is a bit too simple for its own good, and all the images can take forever, especially en masse. As for my peers for their opinions, I utilize Google Forms. Through Google Forms, I sent out questionnaires as to which design or image my friends preferred. I got lots of useful feedback for this and will not be using the site more often. It was a very fun and interesting project to make. I'm glad I can share my passion and knowledge from your sport for this project while also being able to express myself creatively. The freedom I am given in the class is something I'm incredibly grateful for. Thank you.